The crystal flute shivered when he laughed. Candlelight pressed gold into the private dining room and made the walls seem closer. The city's most expensive restaurant liked quiet the way a bank likes locks. Phones lay in leather sleeves with their cameras covered, as if they had been told to keep secrets. Monogrammed cufflinks glittered when wrists lifted, tiny flags of ownership. Asha Miller moved through that hush with a steady pace. She wore the black uniform that turned servers into shadows. Her name tag was slightly bent from an old snag, a flaw she kept meaning to fix. Tonight she let it be. The napkin on her forearm felt like a shield she had trained to carry. At the head of the table sat Graham Vance, the billionaire who owned companies and rooms and the time inside them. When Asha leaned in to pour, he smiled at his guests, then released a crisp line, a derogatory remark cut to fit the air. He laughed first. Others joined him because it was easy. The sound was bright and careless. The champagne flute on Asha's tray trembled, knocking a thin note into the hush. She caught her breath and held it. Wealth spoke in low voices. Dignity tried to keep up. She counted to 3 the way she did when a rush threatened to spill a tray, then set the bottle down. Phones stayed face down. A single candle trembled and steadied. On Graham's wrist, the monogram flashed again. GV, initials that worked like a passcode. Down the table, his wife Lena sat with a soft smile that did not reach her eyes. Behind Lena, half in shadow, a stroller rested near the wall. Its fabric was pearl gray, its handle looped with a narrow ribbon. The ribbon moved when the air moved and then went still. A small signal more honest than the table's talk. Asha noticed it without turning her head. She kept her eyes on the rim of the next glass. She had learned to use calm as a tool. A grandmother's rule lived in her hands. Carry the tray steady so the truth doesn't spill. The remark still hung above the table like steam that does not fade. Someone tried to change the subject. Someone else chuckled again, a quieter echo. The manager peeked in, saw nothing he wished to see, and withdrew. Graham lifted his flute in a light salute toward no one. He seemed pleased with the shape of the night. His laughter left a trace in the room, like a scent you can't name but cannot ignore. Asha folded the napkin over her wrist again. She straightened her shoulders the way she did when the tray felt heavy. The candle flame steadied. The ribbon on the stroller stirred. Asha's breath hovered between her ribs and the room's quiet. Light turned the crystal to water and then back to glass. The table paused on its own, every face tilted toward stillness as if waiting for a cue. Just before the baby moves, the second holds and will not break. The napkin lay on her forearm like a rule she would not break. The private dining room kept its peace the way a vault keeps its air. Candlelight breathed a thin glow across polished wood. One wick leaned, and a faint drip of wax slid down like a small clock. Phones slept in leather sleeves. The walls carried soft sound and returned it smaller. Money likes this kind of quiet. Asha Miller stood straight, feet placed as if on marks taped to the floor. Her name tag, still slightly bent, touched the fabric each time she inhaled. The bend did not shame her. It reminded her to stand level. She watched posture the way others watched prophets. Back long, chin calm, tray balanced, napkin steady. Around the table, Graham Vance's entourage arranged itself by habit. Advisors to his left ready to phrase the world into wins. Security near the door silent, a wall that moved. At his side, Lena Vance kept an even smile, the kind that wastes no muscle. Their silence cost more than most people's speech. Every nod was priced. Every pause was policy. The earlier derogatory remark still lived in the room like smoke that did not show but stayed in the lungs. Laughter had faded, yet the script continued. Asha felt it, the expected shrug, the polished forget. Here, humiliation had a place on the menu. The service fee covered it. Everyone knew. Few named it. She moved to the sideboard, counted quietly, 1, 2, 3, then returned with the check presenter, black and smooth. It fit the hand like a statement. In this room, the small folder was a ledger of power. Signatures lived inside it. Names and numbers shaped what tomorrow could be. Asha did not peek. She would not give the room any excuse to make her smaller. Graham spoke in low strips of talk. Deals, boards, opportunities. Advisors pressed a smile at the right moments. Security scanned the room without turning their heads. Asha refreshed water with a soft tilt of wrist. She kept her breath measured and used her counting when the pulse tugged. 1, 2, 3. each number a step back from the edge. The candle's drip hardened mid-slope, a pale tear arrested by air. Asha saw it, then looked away, guarding her steady. The napkin still rode her arm like a promise. She touched the bent tag and let it be. Discipline did not always mean fixing things. Sometimes it meant holding still. The stroller waited in the shadow near Lena's chair. Ribbon looped from the handle, loose and light. The room had folded it into the decor. A soft shape near the wall, almost not there. Asha filed its place the way she filed exits and spills. She knew care work when she saw it. She also knew how this space turned care into silence. She set the check presenter on the table's edge, angled toward Graham's reach, and felt the room take a long, satisfied breath. Advisors gathered their words. Security watched the corners. Asha's posture did not break. The candle gave a tiny hiss. Then from the shadowed stroller a small sound rose and held. An intake of breath from the stroller. An unmarked pivot. The pearl blanket opened like a quiet door, and a small hand reached through. The private room paused as if a string had been pulled. Candlelight held its place. Somewhere outside, traffic hissed. Inside, the night held still. The crystal settled. The laugh in the air lost balance and slid away. In the stroller's half-shadow, Graham Vance's infant daughter, Isla, tested the space beyond her blanket. Her fingers were small, each a question. They opened and closed like a tiny wave-testing shore. Asha Miller stood with the napkin on her forearm, the bent name tag pressing the fabric when she breathed. She had learned to make calm a habit. Count to 3, then act. But the child's hand did not follow any rule. It moved again, slow and sure, toward the table line where servers were told to stop. Asha's hand lifted, almost without her permission. Her fingers hovered above the table's edge, palm open, as if warming over a low flame. 2 worlds waited there, inches apart, one wrapped in money and secrecy, one trained to be invisible and precise. Her breath stayed caught between the numbers. 1, 2. She did not reach 3. The adults tried to keep the night intact. Advisors returned to their polished phrases and found them dull. Security watched the corners and pretended not to see the child's motion. Lena Vance leaned forward with a mother's reflex, then paused, as if afraid to break the spell. She looked at Asha, then Isla, and something in her face softened, then hid. The room stuttered. Laughter went out like a candle used up. The air grew dense and clean, emptied of the performance. Even the leather phone sleeves seemed to listen. The last drop of wax stopped mid-run. A white tear arrested. Isla's hand floated higher, past the small border of blanket and ribbon, reaching for the shape that had moved with care all night. Asha lowered her hand a fraction so the child could see it clearly. No rush, no fear. Her palm showed the map of her work, light polish, a faint line where a tray usually rests. The distance closed to a few inches, the size of a breath. Asha met the child's gaze. The eyes were steady, not looking at wealth, uniforms, or rules, only a human face. In that gaze lived a simple claim: you are seen. Asha felt the claim arrive and make room inside her chest. The napkin on her arm felt less like a shield and more like a pledge. Graham turned, ready with another line that would tilt the table back to him. The words did not come. He took in the sight, his daughter's hand reaching, the server's hand open to meet it. 2 horizons brought close. He adjusted a cuff link, as if to hold control by metal and habit. The space between the 2 hands narrowed to a breath the room could hear. Silence pooled, clean and charged. And from a dim corner, somewhere near the sideboard, came the faintest sound, a whisper of camera shutters from a corner, unseen by the principals. The phone lit like a fuse. In the service hallway, where the tiles smelled faintly of lemon and steam, Mateo stood with his back to the ice machine. He was a busser, 22, careful, invisible by design. An hour earlier, tucked behind a pillar, he had lifted his phone in his apron and tapped record. 34 seconds. The clipped derogatory remark, the bright laugh, the crystal's small shiver, and then the moment when Isla's hand reached toward Asha's open palm. He had caught it clean. Now his thumb hovered over the screen like a match not yet struck. He replayed the clip with the sound low. Faint clinks, a chair leg whispering against carpet, a soft coo from the stroller, and underneath it, the distant laugh that had rolled across the table and over a person. The phone's light threw a rectangle on the floor, a a small stage where truth refused to sit down. He hesitated. The rule in rooms like this was simple. See everything, say nothing. He needed the job. Brent did not forgive bravery, but the image worked on him. The reach, the pause, the human bridge the adults could not build. He opened a message thread, midnight. He typed to his older sister, "Should I post this or leave it alone?" He erased post. He wrote share. He sent the clip. Minutes later, 3 dots, then her reply. "If you do it clean. No jokes, no heat. Just show what happened." He breathed out. He trimmed the edges for clarity. No zooms, no stickers. He tried captions in drafts. Proof. Got him. Each looked contaminated. He deleted them and typed a single word. Witness. At 12:41 a.m., he uploaded to a small account he barely used, followed by cousins and a few co-workers. He set the privacy open. He placed the phone face down and wiped a stack of side plates that did not need wiping. When he looked again, there were 6 views. Then 19. A comment from someone he did not know. "Is this who I think it is?" He locked the screen and went home on the last bus. The city outside was a long line of sodium lamps. In the seat behind him, a stranger watched a music video, volume up. Mateo replayed the clip with headphones. Faint clinks. One soft coo. The laugh again, smaller but still sharp. He pictured the napkin on Asha's arm, steady as a pledge. He pictured Isla's fingers, opening like a question that expected a true answer. At 5:06 a.m., a larger account mirrored the post without asking. Then another. By 5:22, the laugh bounced from phone to phone across a city not yet awake. A thread formed, timestamps, slowed frames, arrows pointing to the reaching hand. The word witness traveled with it, a plain label that kept its shape. By 5:40, notifications stacked like plates. Requests arrived from handles with blue checks and newsroom logos. At 5:47, the clip hit a morning roundup. The sound design, faint clinks, one soft coo, a distant laugh, played in a loop beside headlines. Kitchen lights flicked on at the restaurant. Phones lit up on nightstands in high places. Journalists pinged the restaurant and Vance's PR before dawn. The second hem on her uniform felt like a small fence she carried with her. Asha Miller had learned to live inside fences without shrinking. Mornings began on the Midra 14 bus, the air smelling of coffee and rain-soaked coats. She stood with one hand on the rail, textbooks in her bag, shoes from last season. Body angled for balance when the driver braked. Nights ended under fluorescent lights at community college, where a tired professor drew formulas that looked like ladders. She wrote them down, rung by rung. Between those hours, she worked the restaurant floor, listening for need before it turned into a snapped finger. Her mother's schedule ran later than the moon. She mapped meals around it. She timed laundry to free machines. When the scholarship offer came in spring, tuition almost covered, she read the letter twice, then folded it back into the envelope. Rent was due. Her mother's hours had been cut. The fence moved closer. She would defer a year, maybe 2. She did not call it a loss. She called it a pause she would not let become permanent. The uniform, hemmed twice by her own hands, was both limit and tool. The fabric told her how to stand. The name tag, still slightly bent, told her who she was in the room. It did not tell the whole thing. Her grandmother had given her the rule that filled the rest. Carry the tray steady so the truth doesn't spill. The sentence worked at the restaurant and outside it. It meant don't let other people's noise knock you off your line. Noise found her anyway. Small daily cuts were part of service. A wallet waved like a command. A joke about where you belong. A tip left as a lesson. Last winter, a guest aimed a derogatory remark like a coin pitched at a stranger. Asha reported it to a manager who pinched the bridge of his nose and said, "Let it pass." She carried the tray steady and did the math. Rent, textbooks, bus fare, time. She did not let the remark own more of her day than it had stolen. She studied on breaks. A page or 2 of ethics, a problem set. A headline about companies that wrote their stories in clean fonts while their numbers hid bruises. She underlined sentences about duty and power with a pen that skipped. She watched the candle wax at work and thought about policies that melted under warm lights. The night with the laugh and the small reaching hand did not change her posture. It clarified it. She had lived near that kind of room for years. She knew its script and the price of each line. When the clip began to move through phones and feeds, messages arrived from people who wanted her anger on record. A blogger asked for a quote. A stranger offered a lawyer. The restaurant sent a careful email about privacy and team unity. Asha read it all once. She placed her phone face down, flattened the second hem, and felt the fence again. Her grandmother's rule rose like a spine. Carry the tray steady. Let the truth stand without her spilling with it. She decided not to comment publicly. Yet, the spin arrived before the sun. In the glass-walled boardroom, the conference table looked new enough to refuse a scratch. Phones sat screen down. Water beaded on bottles like careful sweat. A projector hummed. Crisis people, PR, legal, investor relations, waited with open laptops and closed faces. On the wall, a draft statement waited for edits. It leaned on 3 soft words: misunderstanding, taken out of context, family privacy. Graham Vance walked in fast, cufflinks bright. As he took his seat, he brushed a sleeve and left a single fingerprint on the metal. An ordinary smudge on a man who counted himself spotless. The board chair slid a folder across the immaculate table. Containment, she said. We move quick. We keep it narrow. She had the tone of someone who saves buildings by closing doors. Lena Vance sat 2 chairs down, hands folded on the edge, not touching anything. Or we answer like people, she said. Not like doors. Her voice was measured, almost quiet. This is simple. A comment hurt someone. Our child reached for her. That tells the truth you keep missing. PR read the draft aloud. A misunderstanding. Moments taken out of context. Our family values privacy. The language sanded every edge until the scene sounded smooth and empty. Aides nodded without meaning it. One found a speck on his sleeve and studied it like news. Graham kept his gaze on the text. We will not feed a clip, he said. We will not turn over our family to online moods. He wiped the cufflink with his thumb and made the smudge worse. An aide looked away, the way people do when a small thing looks like a mirror. Legal connected a laptop and put up an email stack. Dates, subject lines, brief notes. As we prepare, you should see this pattern, counsel said. Messages from past quarters came in view. Comments about staff that walked the edge and crossed it. Jokes forwarded. Just lighten up replies. A note about a driver needing thicker skin. No single line was a fire. Together they made smoke you could not ignore. Aides averted their eyes, each studying their own nameplate as if words could not catch them. The board chair tapped her pen once. This is risk, she said. Not just for you, for us. For the company, she turned to PR. Add action. Add review. Add a third-party process. She did not say the word apology. The room knew she was circling it. Lena spoke again. Say her name, she said. Asha Miller. Say the words, I'm sorry. Not if, not but. The baby already showed you what matters. The sentence sat on the table, clean and heavy. Graham resisted. I will not confess to a lie, he said. They cut the video. He gestured at the draft. We go with this. The projector light flattened his face, as if the statement had already been printed on it. PR tried a compromise. We can add learning and listening. The words floated, light as tissue. The chair allowed it, and asked for an internal memo to staff by afternoon. Assure them we take dignity seriously, she said. Remind them of our values. The table returned to motion, edits, deadlines, talking points. No one touched the fingerprint on Graham's cufflink. It gleamed like a fact the room could not polish away. By mid-afternoon, the memo was done. Culture review, training, open-door policy, respect for all. The phrasing was careful and pale. It moved from draft to send with one click. And somewhere between the boardroom and the mail server, it slipped a hand it did not know. A forwarded subject line changed by one letter. A private address guessed right. At 2:17 p.m., the leaked memo reached a reporter's inbox. The first truth snapped shut like a check presenter. A reporter worked in the quiet of a small office, blinds half open, phone on speaker. She gathered voices and lined them up with care. Mateo spoke first, his name withheld by request. He described the laugh, the 34 seconds, the soft coo, the word witness. He offered the timestamps on his post. He did not guess motives. He stuck to what he saw. Next came two former staffers. Their identities changed in the notes. One recalled a winter night when a derogatory remark was treated like weather. Another remembered a tip laid down like a dare. Both stories matched the room Asha had walked through. Low voices that pushed hard, apologies that never landed. The reporter wrote in short lines, not for drama, but for proof. A driver called on his lunch break. He kept his engine running and his name off the record. He spoke about tone, small digs, instructions delivered as if people were devices. No single word burned alone. Together they warmed the page. The reporter listened for pattern, not outrage. She built a grid: date, place, witness, corroboration. At the restaurant, management ran numbers with the same tight calm used for staff schedules. They counted reservations canceled, private parties paused, a sponsor's worry. Then they opened the policy manual, glossy and thin. It promised guest dignity and workplace respect. In this storm, it felt like a flimsy umbrella in rain. The pages fluttered. No one got dry. The check presenter reappeared in the file in a different form. On the night of the incident, Asha had written a brief note on receipt paper, then slid it inside the folder. The copy surfaced now. 10:14 p.m., private room, remark made, laughter, infant reached, server present. No adjectives, no heat. A simple line of record, time stamped by the terminal when she printed her end shift report. The reporter held the slip with a pencil eraser, as if grease could smudge the date. Legal sent careful statements that bent light away. Context, misunderstanding, privacy. PR offered listening, learning, moving forward. The board chair pressed for action and language that sounded firm without sounding sorry. Graham authorized a donation to a community fund. Size significant. Intent unspecified. The wire went through. The receipt looked like a wall he hoped the truth could not climb. But interviews continued. The pattern kept its shape. Each story met another story and held. The reporter pinned the pieces to a single timeline. The remark, the tremble, the reach. The upload. The mirrored posts. The early calls. The boardroom. The memo. Picture form that would not accept a smoother outline. Spin slid off. By evening, the reporter had a draft that read like a ledger of dignity. Who owed what and to whom? She added one more line, taken from the restaurant's lobby camera log. Asha leaving at 11:58 p.m., shoulders straight, uniform neat, no rush in her step. The image said nothing and said enough. Her inbox chimed. A new message sat bright and plain, sent by a civic group that rented a hall downtown. Subject: Workplace Dignity Forum, public invitation. Buddy. We invite Mr. Graham Vance to attend and respond. Cameras allowed. The microphones waited like small, dark witnesses. A civic hall had been rented for an evening. Hard chairs faced a plain stage. The backdrop was neutral. No logo, no color strong enough to argue. Tape marked the floor for cameras. A clock ticked above the exit. People from the city filled the rows. Servers in quiet clothes, drivers with folded arms. Office workers, students, elders. Security stood to the side, visible but still. This was not a rally. It was a ledger read out loud. A moderator set the rules. 2 minutes per speaker, no interruptions, facts over heat. She named the purpose, workplace dignity, and asked the room to honor silence when it came. A low hum moved through the chairs and settled. Reporters uncapped pens. Red lights on small cameras blinked awake. Testimonies began. Mateo stepped up first, cap in hand. He spoke carefully about the 34 seconds he filmed. A clipped laugh, a derogatory remark, the tremble of crystal, the reach of a child's hand toward an open palm. He gave times, not feelings. He ended by saying one word, witness, and left the mic. The silence afterward weighed more than shouting. A former hostess followed. She described a winter night when a joke landed like a shove. She named dates and wrote them on a card for the moderator. A driver spoke from the aisle, union badge on his jacket. He listed small digs that added up to weather you could not get out from under. Each voice was measured, precise. No spectacle, only facts. The restaurant manager read from the policy manual. The pages sounded thin. In the second row, someone held up a check presenter with a photocopy inside. The note Asha had written that night. Time stamped, factual, no extra words. The paper looked ordinary enough to be missed. The room would not miss it. The moderator kept the pace. Between speakers, microphones clicked, then went still, like lungs that knew how to hold breath. The neutral backdrop did its job. It did not rescue anyone. Lena Vance stepped forward on her turn. She gripped the lectern with both hands. "I will be brief," she said. "What you saw happened. I cannot polish it. My child reached for a person we failed to see." She did not cry. She did not explain. She stepped back. Graham stood then as the program required, and faced the rows instead of the cameras. He looked for the place to begin and found Asha instead. She was in the third row, upright, uniform replaced by a plain blouse, name tag left at home. Her hands rested on her knees, steady. She did not rise. She did not nod. She met his eyes with the same exact calm she used when carrying glass. At the back, a caregiver shifted a small stroller. Sla babbled once, one bright sound, clean and round. It pierced the room's script like a pin through cloth. Heads turned and then turned back, as if the room understood the cue. Graham walked to the microphone. He set his notes down, then set his hands flat on the lectern, as if asking the wood to keep him from slipping. The red lights blinked. The hall held its breath. His mouth opened. The apology was not yet spoken, and the entire room lived on that breath. The apology landed like a key turning once. By morning, Graham Vance stood in front of a plain backdrop and used plain words. No if, no but, he named Asha Miller. He said, "I am sorry," and stopped there. Not a performance, just a statement. Cameras blinked, then went still. Truth does not need decoration. The board moved next. An oversight committee formed with outside seats and real authority. Reports would be quarterly, public, and specific. Executive training was set on the calendar as a requirement, not theater. Attendance was not a photo. It was a condition of pay. Behind the scenes, some grumbled. On paper, the rules held. The immaculate conference table would now host audits, not only plans. At the restaurant, policy shifted from frames on a wall to practices with teeth. A zero-tolerance protocol went live with third-party enforcement. When a complaint came in, an independent firm logged a case number, set response times, and protected names from retaliation. The tip pool opened to audit, line by line, shift by shift, so money moved the way it was promised. The manager walked the staff through the hotline card. "This one rings outside," he said, tapping the number. "No one in this building can mute it. None of it felt grand. It felt necessary. That was the point. Asha kept working while the city talked. She took her breaks and opened a small page a friend had set up. No banner, no hype. Donations arrived in quiet amounts. $5 with a note from a teacher, $12 from a fellow server who signed only a heart, $20 from a driver who wrote, "For books." The totals rose like steady rain. A community scholarship came into focus, not from a spectacle check, but from many careful hands. On a late afternoon, she sat at the kitchen table with her mother and registered for classes. Ethics in the workplace. Statistics, She smiled once, small and clean, as the confirmation emails arrived. The second hem on her uniform brushed her knee. It had taken a long year to reach this simple click. The next evening was her last shift. By choice. She ironed the uniform and pinned the slightly bent name tag in its usual place. At the station, a stack of napkins waited. Asha folded one across her forearm and smoothed the fabric until it lay flat, edges true. The napkin returned, not as armor this time, but as a sign of work done right. A fabric smooth as a promise kept. Service ran without incident. The candle near table 6 made a steady halo. The check presenters closed with soft clicks that meant what they said. Near midnight, she turned in her apron, counted out, and signed the form that ended her time there. The policy binder on the shelf looked heavier than before. Maybe it finally held something. The manager approached, no speech prepared. He did not reach for a photo. He stood with his hands open, then one extended. Asha met it. Their hands met in the space where words would only spill. A quiet handshake between Asha and the restaurant manager. Mutual recognition. Daylight made the window honest. Months later, the city moved at a normal pace outside a small cafe. No chandeliers. No leather sleeves for phones. Just ordinary glass, a bell over the door, and the smell of toast. Near the counter, a high chair faced the room. Ela sat in it, strapped in, a crumb on her lip, shoes that squeaked when she kicked. A caregiver held a cup of milk and laughed softly at nothing. The child saw a thread of steam rise from a mug on the next table. She reached not for a person, but for that thin silver ribbon in the air. A tiny current headed nowhere in particular. Fingers opened, closed, opened again, curious, free, unburdened. The world met her hand and did not need fixing. Across the room, in a corner booth, Asha studied. Textbook open. Pen steady. A small battery-safe candle glowed beside a cup of tea. The light was steady, not trembling. A symbol reclaimed. She underlined a line about policy. Rules must live in daily choices, or they are just words. She had seen that proved. At her old job, training was now routine, not a headline. Oversight met each quarter and published numbers people could read. The hotline answered within 3 rings, and closed cases with names protected and steps recorded. Boring work, steady work, the kind that keeps a promise. She did not miss the room that once tried to make her small. Asha paused and stretched her fingers. She looked up. Ila's hand opened again at the steam, at the light on a spoon, at the wide, ordinary day. Their eyes met for a second, not as a rescue, not as a test, simply as neighbors in the same morning. Power had found a better shape. Responsibility, not performance. Policy, not show. Memory, not spectacle. Dignity is not a favor extended by the powerful. It is the ground everyone stands on.